A police officer in St. Cloud, Florida has been arrested after she allegedly stole a credit card from a dead man and used it to make multiple purchases. 25-year-old Diane Ferreira allegedly admitted that she took pictures of a dead man's credit card while at the scene of a medical emergency call. Diane has been relieved of the duty as a patrol officer and charged with criminal use of personal identification information of deceased, fraudulent use of credit card, and theft by taking and retaining possession of the card. Diane allegedly stole the card information while responding to a 911 call of a man complaining of difficulty breathing on the 3rd of April. The man was found deceased when law enforcement arrived at his home. A woman contacted the St. Cloud Police Department on the 14th of April after she saw several suspicious charges on her husband's credit cards, which began one day after he died. The charges list 7 gas station purchases, a Wendy's order, as well as a hotel room. The purchases amounted to approximately $450 in total. After the credit card was cancelled, charges were attempted for fuel and purchase at an eyelash extension business. During investigation into the incident, detectives matched the suspect's vehicle to Diane's, who also fit the suspect's description. Authorities said that all incidents occurred during the days that Diane was off work, or during a time of day when she was not at work. The incidents occurred at locations near her residence. Diane told detectives that she put the credit card onto several mobile applications and used them to make personal purchases. St. Cloud Police Chief Douglas Gork apologised to the victim in a statement. "I offer my sincerest apology to the victim of these acts. This department and its staff is held to the highest standards and expectations by the residents of this city, and keeping the community's trust is paramount." On Tuesday the 9th of May, Diane was arrested and held at the Osceola County Jail, but has since been released after posting a $4,000 bond. 32-year-old Sean Stone is behind bars after assaulting his living girlfriend's 5-year-old son. The incident occurred at around 7 a.m. on the morning of Wednesday the 10th of May at a home in Valley Forge Road in DeLand, Florida. Authorities said that Sean beat the boy with a mop handle after the child urinated in his bed. The child's mother left the house for a doctor's appointment with her daughter, who had cerebral palsy and had a gut feeling that something was off at her house. Upon opening home surveillance app on her phone, she saw Sean standing over her son and punching him repeatedly in the head. The child was lying in bed at the time and curled up in a fetal position. Sean kept kicking the child as he pleaded for him to stop. Sean then grabbed a mop and used it to hit the boy even more. Sean struck the boy with so much force that the head of the mop broke off. The surveillance app stopped working at that point, and the woman rushed home to her child. Upon arrival, after confronting Sean about hitting her son, he started swearing at her, telling her that she hated her and her son. Sean then fled the scene on an ATV, but was later spotted on Marsh Road roughly 3 miles away and he was arrested. The boy was rushed to the Advent Health DeLand. At around 8:30 a.m, deputies learned of the abuse after hospital staff contacted authorities. When deputies saw the boy, he had bruising on his face, eyes, top of his head, a lacerated lip, a bruise on his left thigh and a cracked skull. He also had 2 circular marks that appeared to be cigarette burns on his right shoulder blade. Authorities also learnt from the medical team that the child had fractured ribs that were healing, as well as fractures on his wrist joint. The child was later transferred to Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital in Orlando, who was reportedly in a stable condition with non-life-threatening injuries. Sean told deputies that he got angry after realising that his girlfriend's son urinated in his bed. While he told deputies that he slapped the boy in the mouth, he denied using a mop to hit the boy. Sean is charged with aggravated child abuse and is held at the Volusia County Jail without bond. Police believe Sean deleted the home surveillance video before he left the house. Detectives are working to try and retrieve the video. A 21-year-old mother, her 24-year-old husband and a 22-year-old boyfriend are behind bars for allegedly locking 2-year-old twin boys in a bedroom for days at a time without adequately feeding them. On the 8th of May, authorities responded to an apartment at 8 Meadowlark Lane in Ripley, West Virginia, on reports of an unresponsive 2-year-old boy. The boy was transported to a local hospital before being transferred to Charleston Area Medical Center Women and Children's Hospital, then airlifted to Ruby Memorial. Medical staff determined the boy was suffering from kidney failure and was in a state of severe malnutrition and dehydration. Investigators discovered that Lila Gillenwater, her boyfriend Brian Casto, and her husband Michael Gillenwater locked the victim and his twin brother in the bedroom with a padlock for as many as 6 weeks at a time. The three suspects would medicate the children to get them to go to sleep so they wouldn't have to provide parental care. The boys would often wear nothing but a diaper and were fed pieces of ground beef and Cheerios under the door. The neglect reached a point where one of the twins lost consciousness. Detectives noted that the room was entirely covered in human feces, which made it nearly impossible to walk around. Jackson County Sheriff Ross Mellinger said that the victim had a lot of hurdles to clear medically. The other twin is in a stable condition, and an additional female child in the apartment was safely removed. All three children are under the care of Child Protective Services. Lily, Michael and Brian were arrested and booked into the West Virginia Department of Corrections, each on a $150,000 bond. Michael was charged with 2 counts of child neglect with risk of injury or death, and child neglect resulting in injury, while Lily was charged with 2 counts of child neglect resulting in injury. Brian faces 1 count of child abuse resulting in injury, and 1 count of child abuse with risk of injury. A 55-year-old teacher is accused of physically abusing a student in a class. On Tuesday the 9th of May, authorities received a report stating that Sherry Evans Robinson of Wildwood Elementary School in Sumter County, Florida, pulled the hair and ears of a special needs student to gain compliance. She allegedly knowingly caused the child pain and discomfort. Authorities interviewed several witnesses and learned that she allegedly utilised physical force anytime the victim acted out. Officials did not disclose the victim's name. On Thursday the 11th of May, Sherry was arrested and booked into the Sumter County Detention Center on the charge of cruelty toward a child, abuse without great bodily harm. Sumter County School Board Assistant Superintendent Deborah Moffett said that the student's safety is of utmost importance, and both the school and the school district cooperated fully with law enforcement. She said that while everyone has a presumption of innocence, Mrs. Robinson will not have any contact with students pending the outcome of adjudication. 28-year-old Robert Pippin and his 53-year-old mother Emily Pippin have been arrested after allegedly burying a 54-year-old man's body in their backyard after he died of an overdose. On the 26th of August 2021, Richard Lee Morrison's family reported him missing after not hearing from him for several months. Police said they were able to hone in on Richard's location after his disability payments continued to be withdrawn. On the 16th of September 2022, Robert told investigators that he'd been taking money out of Richard's disability account, and he led them to the body, which was buried in a shallow grave in his backyard at 342 4th Avenue Southwest in Canova, North Carolina. Detectives noted that the grave did not appear to be recent. Robert told authorities that Richard died from a lethal amount of meth that he took in the basement of their home. Canova Police Chief Eric Lofton said that at the time, "We're not going to pursue any charges until we have an autopsy report with the cause of death. Then we'll have an idea of how we need to proceed with the case," he said. The autopsy results came back in April this year, stating that Richard died of methamphetamine toxicity. On Friday the 5th of May, Robert and Emily were arrested and charged with concealment of a corpse. Robert and Emily were being held at the Catawba County Jail. Robert was being held on a $10,000 bond, while his mother was being held on a $1,000 bond. They'd both been released after posting bond. Robert said that he regretted burying Richard at his home. Authorities are investigating a double shooting that left a man dead and another critically wounded. The incident occurred at 1:49 a.m. on Thursday the 11th of May in the 600 block of Fresno Street in Fresno, California. Authorities said that the victims were with several other people outside a liquor store around closing time. Police said that the entire ordeal was captured on surveillance footage, and at least 2 men were involved in some kind of verbal altercation, and shots were fired. Officers responded to the area of White Avenue and Fresno Street on multiple shot spotter alerts. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 45-year-old Nathaniel Castaneda in front of a liquor store with multiple gunshot wounds. He was transported to the Community Regional Medical Center, but succumbed to his injuries at 2:18 a.m. A 33-year-old African-American man who police would not identify fled the scene of the shooting and was found bleeding outside a home along White Avenue, about 6 houses down from the liquor store. He was suffering from a gunshot wound to his upper body and was transported to the Community Regional Medical Center for treatment. He remains hospitalized in a critical condition. Authorities said that both the victims knew each other and that Nathaniel has ties to a gang. Police said that both gunshot victims have a criminal history and were both on post-release supervision for narcotic sales. Detectives are interviewing witnesses to the shooting and are reviewing video footage of the incident to identify the parties involved. Authorities recovered a gun that was used in the shooting left near the scene. No charges or arrests have been announced to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. A 33-year-old man was arrested this week in connection to the disappearance and death of a 19-year-old woman. On the 8th of May, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in Florida released a statement saying they were searching for Anastasia Gilley, who was 4 months pregnant. She was last seen at her home by her father in Greenwood, Florida on the 2nd of May, and was last heard from on the 3rd of May. A neighbour reportedly heard her screaming somewhere near her home at around 10:30 that night. Police later found her phone, purse and other belongings inside her house, fearing foul play was at hand. Her sister told investigators that she also missed a doctor's appointment and failed to show up for work. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office worked closely with the Houston County Sheriff's Office in Alabama, and at around 2 a.m. on the 10th of May, investigators located a body along Headway Avenue near Dothan, Alabama. The body was badly decomposed. Her clothes and jewelry found at the scene led authorities to believe it was Anastasia, as it matched to what she was last known to be wearing. An autopsy is pending to confirm her identification. As a result of the investigation, deputies arrested Marquis McLeod on the 10th of May and charged him with capital murder during kidnapping. Marquis has reportedly been uncooperative throughout the entire investigation. Marquis was initially arrested for violating parole because he crossed state lines by travelling from Alabama to Florida. He and Anastasia reportedly knew each other, and police did not say whether Marquis was a likely father. Authorities said that at one point Anastasia may have willfully met Marquis, but at some stage she was held against her will. A possible motive in the slaying has not been disclosed. Authorities have not confirmed how Anastasia was killed, but Houston County Sheriff Donald Valenza said there's some evidence indicating she may have been shot. He said Marquis could face further charges. Marquis is held at the Houston County Jail. He has a criminal history which includes rape, fraud, robbery, making terror threats and more. 58-year-old David Doyle is behind bars after he shot a 14-year-old girl in the head. At around 1 a.m. on Sunday the 7th of May, authorities responded to a property in the 5000 block of Jimmy Doyle Road in Starks, Louisiana on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a teen girl suffering from a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Detectives learnt that the victim and some of her friends were playing hide and seek, and they chose to hide on David's land. David told investigators he observed shadows outside his home, at which time he went inside and retrieved his firearm. He went back outside and saw people running away, so he shot at them and unknowingly hit the girl. The shooting occurred on a dead-end road with only 3 residents: the suspect, the girl's family and a relative of the victim's family. The girl was transported to an out-of-town hospital for treatment for non-life-threatening injuries, where she is reportedly recovering well. Deputies arrested David on charges of aggravated battery, 4 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm, and illegal discharge of a firearm. He's held at the Calcasieu Parish Correctional Centre with his bond set at $300,000. A 33-year-old woman is behind bars after she robbed and assaulted an 81-year-old woman she was a caregiver for. At around 4:30 a.m. on Friday the 5th of May, authorities responded to 1040 Berkshire Street in Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan, and found an elderly woman suffering multiple injuries, including head trauma. Authorities learned that Essence Lafay Cross forced entry into the woman's home just over an hour earlier, pistol-whipped the victim before robbing her and fleeing the scene. Paramedics were called to the property and transported the victim to the local hospital, where she underwent surgery and remains in a critical condition. The elderly woman provided officers with information that helped trace Essence to a home in the area of Interstate 94 and Van Dyke Avenue in Detroit, roughly 6 miles away. While police were preparing a search warrant for her residence, officers spotted her leaving her property and driving away in a stolen car. Officers from Grosse Pointe Park and Detroit were able to stop the vehicle and arrested Essence after a brief foot pursuit. Police recovered numerous items stolen from the elderly victim at Essence's home, along with the gun that was used during the crime. On Monday the 8th of May, Essence was arraigned on multiple charges including assault with intent to murder, armed robbery, home invasion first degree, unlawful driving of an automobile, and 4 counts of felony firearm. She's held at the Wayne County Jail on a $2 million bond. Her next court appearance is scheduled for the 17th of May. 32-year-old Juan Francisco Lobo Hernandez was arrested after an infant girl in his care suffered abusive head trauma. At around 8:40 p.m. on the 20th of April, authorities responded to a home along Dodgen Road near the intersection of Allen Road in Mableton, Georgia, on reports of a baby girl with difficulty breathing. When officers and paramedics arrived at the residence, they found the infant breathing abnormally and rushed the child to the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. The hospital's child protection team told police that the infant was in respiratory failure, suffered complex skull fractures, retinal and intracranial hemorrhaging. The medical experts found the injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma to the head and consistent with forceful rotational injury to the brain. It was concluded that the injuries could not have been self-inflicted. The investigators learned that Juan was the last person to watch the baby before medics found the injuries. Detectives interviewed Juan on the 25th of April when he blamed paranormal activity for disfiguring the child. He claimed a bad person or some spirit was trying to inflict suffering on his family. He also told investigators that he believed the baby might be possessed by a spirit, or he may have been possessed as well at the time the child was abused. The exact age of the child and details about her parents were not revealed by authorities. A relationship between Juan and the child was also not known. Juan was arrested and charged with aggravated battery and first-degree cruelty to children. He was booked into the Cobb County Jail, but was released on a $33,220 bond. 39-year-old German Matthews is behind bars after he allegedly stalked, beat and raped a woman with a developmental disability. The incident occurred at around 6 a.m. on Saturday the 29th of April, while a middle-aged woman was walking to the bus stop to go to work. She was in the area of Winton Road and Smiley Avenue in Forest Park, Ohio, when German followed her. German then grabbed the victim and threw her over a guardrail into a wooded area. He then hit her in the face and proceeded to rape her. A bystander called 911 for help, and when police arrived at the scene they saw German assaulting the victim. German fled the scene but was taken into custody after a short foot pursuit. The woman suffered significant injuries. German broke both her orbital bones, fractured her skull, broke her nose and caused swelling to her brain. Irvin Leibson, a friend of the victim, described her as a woman in her mid-40s, living with the mental capacity of a teenager. She has a job, he said. One of the things she said when she got into the hospital was, "Tell the people I'm going to be late for work." On Monday the 8th of May, German was indicted on 2 counts of rape, 1 count of kidnapping, and 1 count of felonious assault. He faces a maximum sentence of 22 years in prison if convicted on all charges. German remains held at the Hamilton County Jail on a $700,000 bond. German is reportedly in the country illegally and was previously deported. Hamilton County prosecutor Melissa Powers said, "This man stalked and brutally attacked a total stranger. What happened to this victim is horrifying. I'm so thankful to the witness who called 911 and the police officer's quick response that saved this victim's life." Police arrested a 29-year-old sex offender in connection with the death of a missing 15-year-old girl. His body was found in a dumpster over the weekend. Gracie Sasso Cleveland's family reported her missing on the night of the 6th of May, after they hadn't seen or heard from her since the evening of the 4th of May. Phone records indicate that she was at Timothy Michael Dole's residence at 536 College Avenue in DeKalb, Illinois on the night she disappeared. On the afternoon of the 7th of May, police located Gracie's body in the dumpster on a property adjacent to Timothy's apartment, and he was arrested in connection with her death. Timothy and Gracie were reportedly dating. Police said that on the night of the 4th of May, he and Gracie got into a heated argument when Timothy held Gracie down and suffocated her with a pillow until she lost consciousness, to which she did not recover. He then placed her body in a dumpster, removed her personal items from his apartment, and threw her phone away in the garbage at another location. An autopsy report determined Gracie had died of asphyxiation. Timothy is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated criminal sex abuse, concealment of a homicide, aggravated domestic battery, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, unlawful restraint, and unlawful communication by a child sex offender. He is held at the DeKalb County Jail. If convicted, he faces up to 60 years behind bars. At the time of his arrest, Timothy was on probation for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old. He pleaded guilty to the charges on the 12th of April. He was sentenced to probation and registered his sex offender status with the DeKalb Police Department on the 14th of April. 27-year-old Samuel McRae is behind bars and is accused of shooting 3 men in a convenience store, killing one of them. The shooting occurred at around 3 a.m. on Saturday the 6th of May, when Samuel walked into a mobile gas station store located at 12800 West McNichols Road in Michigan, Detroit. He tried to buy something that was $3, but the transaction declined. When Samuel attempted to leave the store with the unpaid item, the clerk locked the doors. Samuel began to threaten the other customers inside the store and said he will shoot everyone. One of the victims, David Langston, told Samuel, "Don't shoot." David and his best friend, 37-year-old Gregory Fortner Kelly, asked the clerk to open the doors, but Samuel fired at the two friends and another victim anyway, killing Gregory. The clerk reportedly opened the door after the shooting, and Samuel fled the scene in a white Ford Expedition. Samuel was arrested the next day and charged with first-degree premeditated murder, 2 counts of assault with intent to murder, 3 counts of felony firearm, and 1 count of possessing a firearm as a felon. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. Gregory was a substitute teacher and leaves behind 3 children. 28-year-old Darius Lewis is accused of firing a gun at burglars outside his apartment when a stray bullet fatally struck 29-year-old Bethany Mefford. The shooting occurred at around 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday the 10th of May at an apartment complex located at 14807 Woodland Hills in Humble, Texas. 3 people were allegedly breaking into vehicles in the parking lot, trying to steal catalytic converters. Investigators said that Darius, who lives in the unit across the parking lot from Bethany, went outside with a gun and fired multiple times at the suspects. While Bethany was asleep, a stray bullet penetrated the exterior wall of her apartment, fatally striking her in the head. Darius claims he fired at the ground to scare the burglars, but detectives say evidence at the scene doesn't support that. Deputies who responded to the parking lot located the thieves, who were found inside a red car. 2 adults and a juvenile were taken into custody. Bethany's boyfriend did not realise that she had been shot until around 6 a.m. after he went into a room and found her unresponsive. He called 911 when medics arrived and pronounced her dead at the scene. Bethany leaves behind 3 children, all under 8 years old. Darius was arrested and charged with manslaughter and is held at the Harris County Jail on a $75,000 bond. Darius has a criminal history that includes misdemeanors for trespassing and evading arrest, and a felony for possession of drugs. If he posts bond, he must not have any weapons and must wear a GPS monitor. 34-year-old Brandon Johnson is behind bars after fatally shooting 35-year-old Amord Harrell. At 12:21 a.m. on Wednesday the 10th of May, authorities responded to a home at 659 Paul Street in Macon, Georgia on reports of a domestic disturbance. When officers entered the premises, they found Amord unresponsive with a gunshot wound, and he was pronounced dead at the scene by the Bibb County coroner. Authorities learned that Brandon pulled a gun and shot Amord after the two got into a heated argument. It's unclear what the argument was about. Brandon is charged with murder and is held at the Bibb County Law Enforcement Center without bail. A 38-year-old man is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting a 20-year-old woman. At 11:38 p.m. on Tuesday the 9th of May, police responded to the 1300 block of Lily Street in Fort Wayne, Indiana, after receiving reports of shots fired in the area. When officers arrived at the scene, they located an unresponsive young woman at the rear of a residence near an alley with a gunshot wound. Medics arrived shortly thereafter and pronounced the woman dead. The Allen County Coroner's Office later identified the victim as Kira Erin Zepke. Her cause of death was determined to be a gunshot wound to the chest, and her manner of death a homicide. Authorities identified 38-year-old Stephen Atkins as a suspect, and on Wednesday the 10th of May, he was arrested. He's charged with murder and parole violation, and he's held at the Allen County Jail without bond. Authorities have not disclosed the events leading to the shooting or a motive in the attack. The relationship between the victim and the suspect is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. Two men are behind bars after a 23-year-old woman was fatally shot. At around 4:35 a.m. on Friday the 12th of May, authorities responded to a parking lot outside the Suz Lounge nightclub, located at 3253 Deansbridge Road in Augusta, Georgia, on reports of an assault. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 23-year-old Michaela Perkins of Grovetown with at least 1 gunshot wound. She was transported to the Augusta University Medical Center in a critical condition, where she succumbed to her injuries at 6:33 a.m. Later that afternoon, authorities arrested 39-year-old Julius Morris III and 29-year-old Raheem Carter for murder and multiple firearm offences in relation to the incident. They're both held at the Richmond County Jail without bond. A motive of the attack has not been released. On a Facebook page, Michaela identified herself as a certified lash technician. A man is wanted by police for allegedly wounding his ex-girlfriend and murdering her brother. At 6:30 a.m. on the 12th of May, authorities responded to a residence at 1028 Park Street in Blair, Nebraska and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found an unresponsive man and an injured woman who was shot inside the home. Authorities said that 22-year-old Elijah Logan entered the home by kicking it in. He then shot his ex-girlfriend Samuel in both the legs and shot her brother Jordan Ely before fleeing the scene in his green 1988 Jeep Cherokee. Officers rendered first aid to Sam until medics arrived and then transported her to a local hospital and is reportedly recovering well. Jordan was pronounced dead at the scene. Blair Police Chief Joe Lager said that this is a case of a relationship gone bad, and Elijah was mad and he drove to the residence with the intention of killing people inside. Jordan's family said that he died a hero trying to protect his sister Sam and his baby nephew from gunfire. Elijah is reportedly the father of the infant. The boy was found unharmed at the scene. Elijah is from Council Bluffs in Iowa and has a history of domestic violence. He was in court in Potawatomi County as recently as Tuesday the 9th of May on allegations of choking his mother last month after she confronted him about fighting his ex-girlfriend. He posted bond later that day and was expected to be back in court in June. Elijah remains on the run from authorities as the investigation into the matter continues. 24-year-old Asia Calabrese Lewis is behind bars and is accused of drowning her 1-year-old daughter Nirvana Oliver in a retention pond near her home. At around 6:12 p.m. on Thursday the 11th of May, Asia was seen on surveillance video walking with Nirvana along Concourse Parkway in Sandy Springs, Georgia, down an embankment and through some bushes towards a retention pond. The video then shows the pair walking into the water before going out of view of the camera for about 6 minutes, before she's seen on the same video about 6:18 p.m, exiting the pond alone without any clothes and walking towards the parking decks across the street. At 6:39 p.m, authorities responded to the scene on a report of a woman acting in a disturbing manner. When officers arrived, they found Asia naked and rubbing up against cars in the parking deck, having some sort of episode. The father of the child, Kenneth Oliver, arrived and asked Asia where the child was when she replied at the bottom of the pool. Sandy Springs police and firefighters immediately started checking all pools and body of water in the area. Nirvana was eventually found face down and not breathing in a retention pond. She was rushed to Scottish Rite Hospital in Atlanta, where she was pronounced dead. Sergeant Mac McGuinness of the Sandy Springs Police Department said this was not an accident. Police said that the father was completely distraught and has not been charged. The family reportedly lives diagonally across the road from the pond at the Bishop Apartments. Nirvana's aunt Kelsey Oliver said her niece was loved and very well taken care of. "My brother is the best dad and he loved her with every ounce in his body." Asia was arrested and charged with cruelty to children, first-degree and felony murder, and is held without bond. 22-year-old Harold Thompson is behind bars for allegedly fatally shooting his girlfriend because he was upset she had an abortion. At around 7:40 a.m. on Wednesday the 10th of May, authorities responded to reports of shots fired in the 800 block of South Walton Walker Boulevard in Dallas, Texas. When officers arrived, they found 26-year-old Gabriela Gonzalez on the ground at a Shell gas station parking lot, in a critical condition suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Medics rushed to the scene and attempted life-saving measures, however she succumbed to her injuries. Authorities said that surveillance video captured Harold trying to put Gabriela in a chokehold. The couple had reportedly been arguing about an abortion Gabriela had in Colorado. Harold was the father of the child and opposed the procedure. Gabriela managed to shrug off Harold's hold on her, and she ran away. He then pulled out a firearm and shot her once in the head. After she fell to the ground, he continued shooting her before fleeing the scene. The next day, Harold was arrested and charged with murder. He's held at the Dallas County Jail without bond. Authorities said that a separate arrest warrant for Harold issued in March was still active at the time of the shooting. Harold reportedly beat Gabriela while she was pregnant with his child several times throughout their relationship, including trying to strangle her and leaving her with a black eye. Gabriela said that Harold violently attacked her and left her bruised up, and she remained very fearful of him. She was scared of Harold because he had made threats to harm her family and her children. She has kids from a different relationship and he's very jealous of her ex-boyfriend. Gabriella's sister Melanie Rubio was a witness to the shooting. She said that he was so angry that she wanted to get away from him. I knew she wasn't okay, but we couldn't get help. We didn't know how to. Gabriella's family said that she had just ended a tumultuous 4-month relationship with Harold when the shooting occurred. The investigation into the matter continues. An investigation is underway after a woman who police described as an innocent bystander was fatally shot over the weekend. The incident occurred at just before 1 a.m. on Saturday the 13th of May, outside an apartment complex at 643 South 7th Street in Nashville, Tennessee. According to authorities, 53-year-old Leather Hayes was hit by gunfire after individuals inside an SUV started shooting at 2 men nearby. Leather died at the scene. Officials said a man arrived at a hospital later that morning with a gunshot wound to his shoulder. Police believe the man was one of the intended targets in the shooting, but he has been uncooperative with law enforcement. Detectives from the homicide unit are working to identify the person or people involved in the shooting. No further information has been released about the incident. Police are looking for a person responsible for fatally shooting a man outside a 7-Eleven store over the weekend. At just after 1 a.m. on Saturday the 13th of May, authorities responded to reports of a Chevy Aspen that crashed into a 7-Eleven store located at 15553 East Mississippi Avenue in Aurora, Colorado. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a deceased man laying on the ground suffering from a gunshot wound laying next to the SUV. The victim was identified as 27-year-old Javon Jacobs. Police currently have no suspect information or a motive in the shooting as the investigation into the matter continues. A 38-year-old woman is accused of stabbing a family member in the face with a broken hanger and holding him against his will in his RV. The incident occurred on the night of Friday the 12th of May at the Pirate Lane Camping Resort at 5401 South Kingsway, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Authorities said that Angela Marie Zona of Auburn, Massachusetts prevented the man from leaving his RV after she locked the sliding door and attacked him with a broken metal hanger, causing a puncture wound to his face as well as scratches to his arm and torso. After multiple attempts, the man managed to escape and approached security at the front gate and told them that Angela had stabbed him. Security went to find Angela and located her under the RV. They detained her until Horry County Police Department officers arrived and she was arrested. Police were unable to find the weapon used in the RV, however officials found the hanger hidden in her hair during a search at the jail. She's charged with kidnapping and first-degree assault and battery. She was booked into the J. Reuben Long Detention Center, but was released the next day on a $15,000 bond. Authorities have not disclosed the motive in the attack. A 54-year-old man is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting his 49-year-old neighbour over a noise dispute. At around 1:20 a.m. on Sunday the 14th of May, authorities responded to the 1000 block of Hoke Smith Drive in Dallas, Texas on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found Carlos Gonzalez in a critical condition with a gunshot wound to his upper torso. He was transported to the Methodist Central Hospital, where he died from his injuries. On Saturday the 13th of May, Carlos was celebrating his 6-year-old grandchild's birthday with his family, and the party continued into the night after the children went to bed. Carlos and his son pulled up to his house in his truck playing loud music. Lonnie Holcomb, who was with his son on the front porch next door, then fired multiple rounds at the truck with his BB gun, causing damage to the vehicle and striking Carlos, who was in the bed of the truck. As the dispute progressed, people from the party walked over to confront Lonnie. Lonnie then struck one of the party girls, and several people assaulted Lonnie. Eventually Lonnie ended up on the ground with Carlos on top of him. Lonnie then reached into his pocket and pulled out a handgun, and shot Carlos in the chest. The fight ended and Carlos's family called 911. Officers located Lonnie at the scene and he was arrested. They confiscated his BB gun and his handgun. Lonnie told investigators that he had an ongoing dispute with Carlos for nearly a year and said their family played loud music that would interfere with his life. Lonnie is charged with murder and is held at the Dallas County Jail on a $250,000 bond. Carlos leaves behind a wife, 3 children and several grandchildren. A mother and a boyfriend are behind bars after a 2-year-old child was fatally beaten. On Tuesday the 16th of May, authorities responded to a home in Glendale, Arizona on reports of an unresponsive boy. The caller, later identified as 20-year-old Johnny Brazel II, told first responders that his stepson was not breathing and had no pulse. He also said that the boy had been attacked by his dog earlier in the day, and he had a gash and a bump on his head. Paramedics arrived and rendered CPR, but the boy died after arriving at the hospital. Detectives said they found the boy covered with bruises on his body, had swollen and bruised eyes, a bruised head and a skull fracture that appeared to be the result of child abuse. Detectives found bloodstains in the boy's bedroom, which appeared more serious than what Johnny had described. Investigators said that Johnny and the boy's mother, 20-year-old Layla Lopez, provided inconsistent statements surrounding how the child was attacked by a dog. Upon further questioning, Johnny admitted to killing the child and indicated that he hit him several times with a leather belt while holding him in the air by his leg. He also admitted to dropping the child on his head on the hardwood floor and swinging the child's body into objects within the room and striking his head against some furniture. The couple reportedly waited for the boy to stop breathing before calling 911 and agreed to lie to police, paramedics and the hospital about what happened. When both of them were sent to the interview room by themselves, detectives overheard Johnny tell Layla that he killed the child, and the story we talked about didn't work. Detectives noted that neither suspect showed remorse after their arrest. Both have since been booked on murder and child abuse charges, and are each held on a $1 million bond. A 26-year-old woman has been arrested after defecating on a church altar over the weekend. On Saturday, the 13th of May, Laura Miniad of Loveland went into the chapel of the Good Samaritan Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, and defecated on the altar. She then used a fabric runner on the altar to wipe herself. Laura smeared her feces on the altar using a picture she found inside the chapel. On Monday, the 15th of May, Laura was arrested on a felony charge of desecration. She was booked into the Hamilton County Jail with a bond set at $2,500. She is set to appear in court on the 25th of May. Authorities did not disclose the motive. 37-year-old Jamie Michelle Bradley Brunn is behind bars for allegedly killing her 6-year-old daughter and attempting to drown her 8-year-old daughter. At around 1:25 a.m. on Friday, the 19th of May, authorities responded to a home on Sam Doyle Drive on St. Helena Island, South Carolina, on a report of a woman trying to drown her 8-year-old child. The victim's cry for help woke her 16-year-old sister. She went to the bathroom where the screams were coming from, and she was able to intervene and save her 8-year-old sister. She then took her 8-year-old sister to safety in a nearby family residence and called 911 for help, and deputies responded to the crime scene. During a search of Jamie's home, deputies found 6-year-old Micaiah Bradley Brunn unresponsive. Deputies administered CPR and she was transferred to the Beaufort Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Authorities said that information obtained during the investigation led them to believe that Jamie fatally drowned Micaiah and then tried to drown her other daughter. While arresting Jamie, deputies tased her after she tried to take a deputy's weapon. Beaufort County Sheriff P.J. Tanner commended the 16-year-old girl for protecting her family when no one else was available to do so. Later that day, an autopsy confirmed Micaiah's cause of death was drowning. Jamie is charged with murder and attempted murder, and she's held at the Beaufort County Detention Center. The 16-year-old and the 8-year-old sisters are staying with family in Beaufort County. The investigation into the matter continues. 27-year-old Orlando Cruz and 34-year-old Dana Ramon faced multiple charges of abuse after their 2-month-old infant son was admitted to hospital in San Antonio, Texas with serious injuries. Authorities said that on Friday, the 12th of May, Diana returned home after picking her children up from school and found Orlando applying pressure to the infant's hands with a baby wipe. Diana told police that she noticed the wipe was full of blood and that the baby continued bleeding. She also said that she found a cut on the infant's left foot. She said that later that evening, she noticed bruises on the child's shoulders and abdomen. She said that she told Orlando that he needs to be more careful in the way he handles a baby because he's creating bruises. At around 11 p.m. on Saturday, the 13th of May, the infant became lethargic and lost consciousness, so Diana called 911. Medics arrived and transported the baby to hospital. Doctors advised Diana that the child had multiple skull fractures, bilateral brain bleeding, a fracture to his upper arm, a fracture to his left shin bone, and fractures to both sides of his ribs in addition to bruises and lacerations. Authorities said that Orlando was watching the child on Friday afternoon when he became injured. While questioned at the hospital, Orlando allegedly admitted that his son fell from his hands and hit his left side of his head against the bassinet, but was too afraid to tell anyone. He said that as the child slipped away, he also scratched the baby's face with his fingernail. Orlando was unable to explain to investigators how the child incurred the other injuries and bruises. On Monday the 15th of May, a nurse at the hospital contacted San Antonio Police Department officers and advised them that all the fractures were in different stages of healing, which means the injuries occurred on different dates. The nurse also stated that the rib fractures had callus formations, meaning the fractures happened weeks ago. Diana originally told police that Orlando wouldn't allow her to call 911 or seek medical treatment for the baby, and that he was home all day on Friday and Saturday, impeding her ability to call for help. In a secondary interview, she told police that Orlando left to go to the store during the day on Saturday, but she still didn't call for help. She also claimed to have not noticed any of the injuries because she only changed the child's diapers, and that Orlando was the only one who gave him baths. Investigators argued that any reasonable person will notice those injuries while changing diapers. On Wednesday the 17th of May, Diana was arrested and charged with serious bodily injury to a child by omission. Orlando was arrested days earlier on Sunday the 14th of May and charged with injury to a child resulting in serious bodily injury. Orlando's bond was set at $15,000 and he was released from the Bexar County Jail on Tuesday. Diana's bond has been set at $75,000 and is reportedly still in jail. Bonds were set by different magistrate judges at the time they were booked into jail. The baby is reportedly in a stable condition in the local pediatric intensive care unit. Authorities are investigating a triple homicide after a 34-year-old man fatally shot his wife and her parents on Friday morning. At around 9:45 a.m. on the 19th of May, authorities received a call from a man later identified as 34-year-old Jeremy Bailey. He said he just killed his wife, mother-in-law and father-in-law. Jeremy remained on the phone with dispatchers while officers responded to the family home, located at 1832 East Gentile Street in Layton, Utah. When officers arrived at the premises, they instructed Jeremy to exit the home and was taken into custody shortly thereafter. Officers entered the residence and found 3 victims inside who had been fatally shot. The victims have been identified as Jeremy's wife, 36-year-old Anastasia Stevens, his stepmother, 61-year-old Becky Stevens, and his father-in-law, 73-year-old Donald Stevens. Additionally, 3 out of the 4 family dogs were also killed. The residence belongs to Jeremy and his wife. Becky and Donald were Nevada residents who were in Utah to visit the couple. Authorities are working to determine the motive behind the killings. The investigation into the matter continues. 53-year-old Gilberto Puga is behind bars after being accused of holding 2 women hostage and staging it as a burglary. At 9:22 a.m. on Sunday the 14th of May, authorities responded to a home at the 26,000 block of Prairie Dog Lane in Moreno Valley, California on report of a burglary. Gilberto told dispatch 2 females burglarized his residence. Meanwhile, dispatch received an additional call for service regarding 2 females who were at Gilberto's residence screaming for help. Upon arrival, deputies located 2 women walking away from Gilberto's home. While questioned, Gilberto was uncooperative with deputies and left the location. Upon further investigation, it was determined that Gilberto was not a victim of a burglary, but instead locked the women inside his residence, held them against their will and tortured them. He allegedly assaulted the victims with a stun gun. The victims' identities were not revealed, and the authorities have not disclosed while they were in their house or any other details on how they knew Gilberto. On the morning of Monday the 15th of May, Gilberto was located in his vehicle about 25 miles away in Hemet, and he was arrested without incident. He is charged with false imprisonment and torture. He is held at the Robert Presley Detention Center in Riversdale County on $1 million bond. Gilberto has previously been convicted of vehicle theft, battery on a peace officer and driving under the influence. 2 people are dead following an early morning shooting on Friday. At 1:17 a.m. on the 19th of May, authorities responded to the lower unit of a residence at 1836 Broadway Street in Toledo, Ohio, on reports of shots fired. When officers entered the premises, they found 35-year-old Kayla Coleman and 49-year-old Jeremy Black dead from apparent gunshot wounds. According to an autopsy report from the Lucas County Coroner's Office, the cause of death for both Kayla and Jeremy was multiple gunshot wounds, and the manner of their deaths has been ruled a homicide. Police did not identify any suspects in the shooting or say how the victims are connected. The investigation into the matter continues. An investigation's underway after a 21-year-old man was found dead in his bedroom. At 2:07 a.m. on Friday the 19th of May, authorities responded to a home at 212 Mahoning Drive in Lima, Ohio on reports of an unresponsive man. When authorities arrived at the residence, they found Zachary Coley in his bedroom deceased with a gunshot wound. His body's been transported to the Lucas County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. Shawnee Township Police said that further information will be released pending the results of that autopsy. Zachary was a graduate of Alida High School. He liked gunsmithing, hanging out with friends and travelling. Recently he enjoyed going to the casino. He's survived by his parents and 5 siblings. A suspect is on the run after a fatal shooting outside a bar in Long Island. The incident occurred at around 2 a.m. on Saturday the 20th of May, when 30-year-old Alex Smith was shot following a confrontation in the parking lot of Lindsay Torres Place, located at 373 Neighborhood Road in Massac Beach, New York. When first responders arrived on reports of a shooting, Alex was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities have not named any suspects, but said they are searching for the shooter and are trying to determine the motive behind the killing. Authorities are asking for anyone with information on the case to contact Crime Stoppers. Alex worked for his family's tree service. He's one of 8 siblings and the younger brother of a former WBO light heavyweight champion boxer, Joe the Beast Smith Jr. He leaves behind 4 children ranging from 10 months to 9 years old. 46-year-old Sheree Harris was fatally shot outside a convenience store over the weekend. At 2:19 a.m. on Saturday the 20th of May, authorities responded to a Circle K convenience store located at 4150 Washington Street in Vicksburg, Mississippi on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Sheree unresponsive, lying in the parking lot with at least 1 gunshot wound. Warren County Coroner Doug Husky pronounced the man dead at the scene. Witnesses said the shooting began as a physical altercation before escalating to gun violence. Authorities said that a man was taken into custody at the scene and another was taken to the police station for questioning. However, no charges have been announced to date. The investigation into the matter continues. A woman who was 6 months pregnant fatally shot her toddler son before turning the gun on herself. At 8:27 p.m. on Wednesday the 17th of May, authorities responded to a home at 152 King Street in Wallace, Idaho, after receiving a report of a dead woman and child. When deputies entered the residence, they found 33-year-old Elizabeth Lawley and her unnamed 2-year-old son, who were deceased with gunshot wounds. The Shoshone County Sheriff's Office said that the preliminary investigation indicates that Elizabeth likely killed her son and then fatally shot herself. Elizabeth's father was the first to stumble upon the scene. Neighbours said he returned to his home at around 6 p.m. and assumed his daughter and grandchild were napping in a separate room of the house. It wasn't until around 8:30 p.m. that he went to check on them and found their bodies. Sheriff Holly Lindsay said, "In my 19 years of service for the Shoshone County, I've never seen a Shoshone County Sheriff's Office so somber, so devastated. It was an extremely difficult day for the family, our office and for this community," she said. The parents of a 2-year-old girl allegedly left their daughter in a hot car for about 15 hours before she was found dead. The couple's 4-year-old son was also reportedly left in the car, but managed to escape and is in the custody of Child Protective Services. At 3:43 p.m. on Tuesday the 16th of May, authorities responded to a home in Prosperity, Florida, after a woman, later identified as the children's mother, called 911 and was disturbed and screaming so much that the dispatcher wasn't able to obtain much information. Responding deputies arrived at the scene and were met outside with the woman carrying an unresponsive child. Deputies immediately attempted life-saving measures on the toddler girl, but it wasn't enough, and she was pronounced dead at the scene at 3:59 p.m. Her body temperature was reportedly 107 degrees Fahrenheit at the time. The toddler's mother, 23-year-old Catherine Adams, initially told police she found a baby unresponsive inside the house, but allegedly later confessed that she forgot about her sleeping children and left them in the car. They were reportedly left in the car between midnight and 3 p.m. Police tried to interview the father, 32-year-old Christopher McLean, but he was uncooperative and invoked his right to remain silent. Police executed search warrants for the parents' home and car, where they found numerous packages of meth and marijuana, along with drug paraphernalia. Catherine and Christopher were arrested and originally booked on charges of child neglect, possession of meth and possession of drug paraphernalia. The Holmes County Sheriff's Office has indicated that the couple will face additional charges following the completion of the autopsy. The investigation into the matter continues. 18-year-old Christian Koleski has been charged for shooting his 3-year-old sister Yana, who he was babysitting at the time. At 10:57 a.m. on Friday the 12th of May, authorities were called to a home at 5124 29th Avenue in Kenosha, Wisconsin on a report of a shooting. When police arrived at the home, no one answered the front door and it was locked. The responding officers saw Christian peer out the window and he was instructed to open the door, but he didn't. Officers then entered the home through the back door and found the young girl in the bedroom. She was lying on the bed crying, propped up on a pillow with a bath towel draped over her left leg. When officers removed the towel, they found a gunshot wound to her upper left thigh, which appeared to be her through and through. One of the officers applied a tourniquet and took the girl to a waiting ambulance. She underwent emergency surgery to clean out the wound of debris and stitch the entry and exit wounds and is now recovering. When questioned, Christian denied that there was any gun and claimed that the child did not get shot in the house, but they heard the gunshot outside. Officers found no bullet strikes from outside the residence. Investigators found a bullet defect in the wood floor of the bedroom and another defect on a lamp as if the bullet had ricocheted off the floor and into the lamp. Investigators found a fired cartridge and a fire projectile on the floor in close proximity. Authorities said that Christian was babysitting his 3-year-old sister while his mother was at work. A 19-year-old woman named Dynasty Cooper was also present at the residence, as well as a 1-year-old boy. Dynasty told investigators that Christian and the girl went into the bedroom when she heard a gunshot. She said that while she helped the girl, she heard Christian call someone to come and get the gun. Christian eventually admitted to shooting his little sister, but said it was an accident. He told police he tried to take care of her by giving her Tylenol and using popsicles to help with the pain and slow the bruising. Christopher then called his mother and told her what happened, and she called his grandmother, who then called 911. Christian told investigators that because he was on probation, he was never going to call police or 911, and he did not want to go to jail. When a detective pointed out that Yana could have died, he remained adamant that he would not have called the police. Christian appeared in court on Friday the 19th of May and was formally charged with felonies of first-degree recklessly endangering safety with a dangerous weapon, possession of a firearm by an adjudicated felon, neglecting a child with the consequence of great bodily harm, and solicitation of harbouring or aiding a felon by falsifying information. He is held on a $25,000 cash bond. If convicted, Christian faces decades behind bars. A 3-year-old child got hold of a gun and shot 2 people at an apartment last week, wounding both the mother and a friend, the latter whom is wanted in connection to a murder. The shooting occurred at around 8:30 p.m. on Thursday the 18th of May at the Romney Meadows apartment complex in the 3000 block of Mount Court in Lafayette, Indiana. Officers were initially dispatched to a local emergency room to speak to a man and woman with non-life-threatening gunshot wounds. The victims were treated and released. One of them, 23-year-old Trayshawn Smith, was then booked into the Tippecanoe County Jail on an active murder warrant out of Cook County, Illinois. Cook County, Illinois is roughly a 2-hour drive from Lafayette, Indiana. Lafayette Police Department is working with the Markham Police Department in Cook County regarding the murder arrest. The State Child Services Agency has been contacted, and the shooting remains under investigation. Investigators discovered a couple shot dead in an apartment over the weekend in an apparent murder-suicide. At 12:05 a.m. on Saturday the 20th of May, authorities responded to the 100 block of Roosevelt Boulevard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found 26-year-old Katie Dales on a mattress, deceased with multiple gunshot wounds to her head. Her 27-year-old partner Tyron Boucard shot her before fatally turning their gun on himself. 2 of their children aged 4 and 6 witnessed the shooting. Although physically unharmed, they've been traumatized and will undergo counseling. Katie leaves behind 3 children, Jayla, Kyra and Mako. Authorities have arrested 54-year-old Robert Ashley Peterson on suspicion of killing his 57-year-old girlfriend Laurie Beth Finlay, who was beaten and fatally shot. A friend of Beth contacted law enforcement on the 17th of May. The caller stated that she found the door to Beth's residence open and a pet left behind. She said that she had not heard from her friend since the 15th of May. Outside of Beth's home, A neighbour's surveillance video shows Beth willingly getting into Robert's vehicle on the 15th of May. Neighbours reported that this was the last day that Robert's vehicle was seen outside his home. At 9:04 p.m. on Thursday the 18th of May, authorities responded to Robert's home at 11504 Del Vista Drive in Warsaw, Missouri. 2 women had reportedly forced entry into Robert's residence in an effort to locate Beth. A sheriff's officer said that 2 women found a body concealed with a blanket and trash bags, and a large volume of blood on the walls, floor, ceiling and furniture. Upon their arrival, deputies located Laurie's body and called the scene horrific in nature. The autopsy determined that Laurie had been shot multiple times in the head and neck, as well as bludgeoned in the upper body, head and neck. Deputies located Robert at his parents' residence in Marshall, Missouri and arrested him. Robert's father said he'd been staying with him since the 15th of May. He was booked into the Benton County Jail on charges of 3rd-degree assault, 1st-degree murder, tampering with physical evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. He remains held without bond and further charges are possible as the investigation continues. Benton County Sheriff Eric Knox released a statement stating, "It's a very fresh, ongoing, very heinous crime, and it's going to take a little bit to get through it, but he's in custody and he's not going anywhere. Robert has a criminal history of multiple domestic assaults." A 53-year-old man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for strangling a 17-year-old girl who went to his house to buy Disney cups 4 years ago. On the 15th of May, Arthur Jensen was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Adara Bunn. At 4:13 p.m. on Monday the 5th of August 2019, Iroquois County Sheriff's Department deputies went to Arthur's home at 315 West Main Street in Sheldon, Illinois, after neighbors heard screaming coming from inside the house. When law enforcement arrived, Arthur walked outside his home and told them that there's a girl inside, and I strangled her. Deputies found Adara deceased inside the residence and took Arthur into custody on a homicide charge. An autopsy report showed that Adara died from ligature strangulation. A few days prior on Friday the 2nd of August, Adara and her mother went to a garage sale at Arthur's house to buy some Disney cups. On Sunday the 4th of August, Adara returned back to the residence wanting to talk to Arthur's wife and see if she had any more memorabilia she could buy. Arthur's wife was out of town at a high school reunion at the time. Arthur and a friend were packing up the leftover garage sale items, and Arthur told Adara to come back tomorrow to purchase a matching set of Disney cups. When Adara returned to his house the next day to buy the cups, he killed her. Adara was a straight-A student, and she was hoping to become a veterinarian. Police are investigating a shooting that left 3 people dead and 2 wounded on Sunday morning. At 1:26 a.m. on the 21st of May, authorities arrived at the Climax Lounge nightclub at 4242 Indiana Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri, after responding to reports of shots fired. Officers found 5 adult victims, 3 of whom were transported to hospital. 2 of the victims were pronounced dead at the scene. One was inside the lounge, while the other was outside. One of the hospitalized victims later died, while the other 2 remained in a critical condition. The deceased victims have been identified as 24-year-old Antoinette Brenson, 33-year-old Clarence Henderson, and 41-year-old Jason McConnell, who was working security at the venue. Clarence, a rapper known by the stage name Nutty Still Gassin', performed at the club earlier that night, and as he was leaving the shooting broke out. Authorities have not announced any arrests, suspect information or a motive in the shooting. The investigation into the matter continues. A man is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend at a car dealership where she worked. At around 8:40 a.m. on Saturday the 20th of May, authorities responded to Legend Motors, located at 10200 8 Mile Road in Ferndale, Michigan, on reports of an active shooter. Authorities received information that a male in a white Chevrolet Equinox was shooting and a female was on the ground before the shooter drove away from the scene. When officers arrived, they found a deceased woman laying on the ground of the parking lot with multiple gunshot wounds. The woman was later identified as 40-year-old Annie Namu from Sterling Heights. At 9:45 a.m., 43-year-old Gregory Davis of Oak Park turned himself into Detroit police. Investigators learned that Gregory and Annie used to be in a relationship and they have a 10-year-old child together. Annie worked as a manager at Legend Motors, and Gregory followed her there and used his vehicle to block her car in. As Annie tried to run away to get help, Gregory shot her once, and then again at close range with a semi-automatic shotgun that he reportedly stole. Their child witnessed the shooting from the passenger seat of Annie's car. Gregory then pointed the gun at other people and fired more shots, though no one else was hit. On Tuesday the 23rd of May, Gregory was arraigned on charges of first-degree murder, attempted murder, felon in possession of a firearm, felonious assault, and 4 counts of felony firearms second offence. Gregory is held at the Oakland County Jail, and his bond has been denied. If convicted of first-degree murder, Gregory faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. A man was arrested over the weekend for shooting his roommate after fighting over food. The incident occurred on the night of Saturday the 20th of May at a home at Hathaway Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky. 64-year-old Clifton Williams became upset because his roommate had eaten his last Hot Pocket, so he started throwing tiles at him, and the two got into a physical altercation. The roommate started exiting the premises, but as he tried to leave, Clifton grabbed a gun and shot him in the backside. The victim escaped and walked several blocks away until he was able to get help in Beaches Street. He was taken to the University of Louisville Hospital, where he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Clifton was arrested in the early hours of the following morning. On Monday the 22nd of May, he was arraigned in court on 1 count of assault. He entered a not guilty plea, and the judge set his bond at $7,500 cash. He was ordered not to have contact with his roommate and not to possess a firearm or any other weapons. The next court date is set for the 30th of May. A 42-year-old woman is behind bars and is accused of killing her husband. At 5:58 a.m. on Wednesday the 24th of May, authorities responded to a report of a domestic disturbance at an apartment complex on the 3200 block of Sweet Gum Trail in Arlington, Texas. Tran called police and told them that she hit her husband in the head with a hammer. When officers arrived, they found Myers sitting outside near the apartment door, and she was taken into custody. When officers entered the apartment, they found Myers' 45-year-old husband unresponsive in a bedroom, laying on a bed with extensive head trauma and a hammer nearby. Paramedics pronounced the victim dead at the scene at 6:15 a.m. Prior to the fatal beating, the victim invited Myers to his apartment to sign divorce papers. Myers told police she built up anger over her relationship status, and at 4 a.m. that day, she grabbed a hammer from her car. Upon retrieving the hammer, she went inside the apartment and debated killing her husband. She said that after debating in her mind, she stated that she hit him 6 to 7 times in the head with a hammer before calling police. She said she was fully aware of her actions and accepts responsibility for killing her husband. The victim's identity has not been disclosed. Myers was initially booked into the Arlington City Jail on a charge of murder, but she was moved to the Tarrant County Jail on Thursday the 25th of May, where she remains held without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. An 18-year-old man is behind bars for allegedly fatally shooting his family inside their home. At 10:48 a.m. on Tuesday the 23rd of May, authorities responded to 563 Lemon Acres in Texarkana, Texas, on reports of a man who had harmed his family and was threatening to kill himself. When officers arrived, witnesses on scene made them aware of an individual armed and barricaded inside the residence. A Bowie County Sheriff's Office negotiator made contact with the suspect, who was identified as Cesar Alolda. After a 2-hour standoff, he eventually surrendered. Police entered the home and located 4 deceased victims inside the bathroom. Authorities said that Cesar killed his parents Ruben Alolda and Aida Garcia, his older sister Lisbeth Alolda, and his 5-year-old brother Oliver Alolda. Cesar reportedly shot each person multiple times. Investigators located spent cartridge casings on the floor and blood spatter all over the home. Authorities believe the victims were all killed elsewhere inside the home and dragged into the bathroom. One of Lisbeth's co-workers, Joseph Leder, noticed that she did not show up for work, so he went to her house to check in on her. When Joseph got there, Cesar allegedly told him that he killed the rest of his family. Joseph reportedly told investigators that Cesar made statements that he killed his family because they were cannibals and they were going to eat him. Cesar was still holding a gun during this interaction and picked up a knife at one point. Cesar called 911 to report that he killed his family and specifically mentioned his father Ruben by name. Cesar was booked into the bi-state jail for multiple charges of capital murder. His bond has been set at $10 million. Neighbour Robert Ward described the victims as a beautiful family, made up of extremely nice and hard-working people. He said the daughter had recently graduated from college and planned to become a teacher, and that Cesar was such a good kid. He was going to get into an apprentice program to be a plumber. Police are investigating after 2 people were fatally shot on Tuesday night. At 11:48 p.m. on the 23rd of May, authorities responded to the 1900 block of Hanley Street in Gary, Indiana on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found 2 unresponsive men on the ground with apparent gunshot wounds. Paramedics transported the men to the Methodist North Lake Hospital, where they were pronounced dead. The Lake County Coroner's Office identified the victims as 42-year-old Edward Lott and 33-year-old Charles Roy. It was determined that each man died from multiple gunshot wounds, and their deaths were ruled a homicide. Authorities have not released suspect information or a motive in the shooting. Gary police said that the investigation into the double homicide is active and ongoing. Police are investigating the deaths of 2 people after their bodies were found inside an apartment early this week as a murder-suicide. At around 1:15 p.m. on Thursday the 25th of May, authorities responded to 1209 East Fire Tower Road at Belmead Apartments in Greenville, North Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers entered the residence, they found a man and woman deceased inside from apparent gunshot wounds. The bodies have been identified as 35-year-old Ronnie Renee Barnes and 39-year-old Michael Anthony Wilkes Jr. Investigators said that the 2 were in a romantic relationship. Police said that based on evidence collected by detectives, the case has been investigated as a murder-suicide, pending autopsy results. Police are searching for the perpetrators responsible for the drive-by shooting that left a man dead and wounded 2 others. At 10:37 p.m. on Friday the 19th of May, authorities responded to 625 Northwest 19th Street in Pompano Beach, Florida on reports of shots fired. According to investigators, the victims had gathered outside a home when people inside a dark 4-door vehicle opened fire, striking the men. A local resident said he heard at least 20 shots and ducked for cover. "All I did was cover my kid. That's the only thing I could do," he said. Another neighbour said that she heard repeated gunfire and said it sounded like an automatic rifle. When deputies arrived at the scene, they found 2 men suffering from gunshot wounds. The deputies tried to keep them both alive until paramedics arrived. Paramedics transported the victims to a nearby hospital when one of them, identified as 22-year-old Giovanni Linda, was pronounced dead. Investigators said that a 3rd victim was taken to a local hospital by a private vehicle. The surviving victims suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Those that live nearby said that they hope the senseless shootings stop. "This is like the 3rd time in the past year and a half," a neighbour said. "Personally, I'm tired of it. I just want to go to work and come here and live. But I live in the wrong street," he said. "Too many dead. These young people have to stop. They have to stop," said the local resident. Police have not released a motive and no arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. A man has been arrested following a shooting that left 1 person dead on Sunday evening. At 6:45 p.m. on the 21st of May, authorities responded to a home along Rushing Road West in Denham Springs, Louisiana, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the residence, they found a man in a critical condition suffering from a gunshot wound to his torso. Despite attempting life-saving measures, he died at the scene. The victim was identified as 39-year-old Daniel DeBernardi. Denham Springs police arrested 32-year-old Chase Nicholas Whalen and charged him with manslaughter. He was booked into the Livingston Parish Detention Centre at 1 a.m. the following morning. No further information on the shooting has been disclosed. 37-year-old Courtney Taylor has been found guilty of fatally stabbing his romantic rival in the chest. On Tuesday the 23rd of May, Courtney was convicted for second-degree murder for the death of 46-year-old Derek Dwayne Taylor. On Monday the 7th of September 2020, Courtney entered his ex-girlfriend's apartment on Marion Street in Shreveport, Louisiana, and found her sleeping next to her new boyfriend Derek. Courtney grabbed a knife and stabbed Derek in the heart while he slept, puncturing his right ventricle, and he bled to death. Courtney's ex was asleep during the attack, and although she was unable to identify the assailant, surveillance footage captured Courtney entering and exiting the apartment. He fled Shreveport following the killing, and US Marshals attempted to arrest him in December of 2020. He shot at officers and evaded capture, but was arrested a short time later in Bossier City without incident. While in custody, he made a phone call in jail stating that his ex would not be able to testify against him because she was sleeping. Courtney will be sentenced on the 22nd of June and faces life in prison without parole. 52-year-old James Harrison has been killed by police after he shot 3 people, fatally wounding 2 of them. At 11:58 p.m. on Tuesday the 23rd of May, authorities responded to 2 Ligging Court in Johnston, Rhode Island, on a report of suspicious activity. Upon arrival, officers spoke with 44-year-old Thomas May, who said he heard banging noises coming from outside his daughter's bedroom window. He said that when he raised the window blinds, he saw his neighbour, James Harrison, outside his home with a ladder, and then saw him run back toward his home next door. Officers did not find any signs of attempted forced entry or a ladder. However, Thomas reportedly requested to file a trespass order against James. Officers attempted to contact James at 4 Ligging Court without success. The following morning at around 7:30 a.m, an officer responded to James's home to try to contact him again. The officer spotted James in a dark Buick Encore, and he reportedly made a gesture consistent with shooting a firearm as the officer approached him on Simmonsville Avenue. As the officer drove into the driveway of 2 Ligging Court to turn around and follow James, he found Thomas's 15-year-old daughter on the front lawn of the home with apparent gunshot wounds. At around the same time the officer arrived, police received 2 separate reports of shots fired in the area. Additional officers responded to the home and discovered Thomas dead in the garage with a fatal gunshot wound to the head. Officers then entered James's residence and found his mother, 83-year-old Janet Harrison, deceased also with a gunshot wound to the head. Thomas's daughter told police that James was the shooter, and she was transported to the Hasbro Children's Hospital and is recovering from non-life-threatening injuries. Police then issued a lookout alert to local law enforcement agencies for James. A couple hours later, Cranston police initiated a car pursuit after locating James at the St. Anne Cemetery. His vehicle hit a Cranston police cruiser on Plainfield Pike in Cranston, near the Route 295 overpass, before he jumped the centre median and crashed into a rock. He was quickly surrounded by police, who ordered him to get out of the vehicle. After several minutes, he got out and pointed a handgun at the officers, who then fatally shot him. No officers were injured during the ordeal. The Johnston Police Department released a statement commending the assistance provided by the Cranston Police Department, the Providence Police Department and the Rhode Island State Police in swiftly locating this armed and dangerous individual. A 42-year-old man is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting another man on Thursday morning. At 11:25 a.m. on the 25th of May, authorities responded to the 1300 block of 12th Street in Longview, Texas on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found a deceased victim laying on the side of the road with a gunshot wound. The man was later identified as 45-year-old Martin King, and his death was ruled a homicide. During the investigation, police identified Michael Deshawn Jackson as a suspect in Martin's death. The following morning, he was taken into custody and interviewed by detectives. He was charged with murder and booked into the Gregg County Jail, where he remains on a $250,000 bond. Authorities did not disclose a motive in the shooting or how the men knew each other. The investigation into the matter continues. A double shooting that left a woman and a man dead on Friday morning is being investigated as a murder-suicide. Police identified the victims as 48-year-old Shawntae Harris and 66-year-old Steve Harris. At around 8:15 a.m. on the 26th of May, authorities responded to an apartment in the 4900 block of Lindenwood Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri after receiving a call for help after a woman had been found shot inside a bedroom. When first responders arrived at the scene, the woman had died from her injuries. A man was also found dead at the scene. The female victim's son reportedly found the body of his mother, and he called 911. Neighbours reported hearing arguing at the residence at around 8 a.m, followed by gunshots. The relationship between the victims is unclear. Police are investigating the case as a likely murder-suicide as the investigation into the matter continues. 2 arrests have been made after a homeowner was fatally shot during an attempted robbery on Wednesday night. At 10:25 p.m. on the 24th of May, police responded to a ShopSpotter alert and a call of a shooting at a home along the 200 block of Park Avenue in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. When officers arrived at the premises, they found 36-year-old LaKendrick Powell unresponsive with a gunshot wound. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities said that 21-year-old Sincere Davis went to LaKendrick's home that night intending to rob it and fatally shot LaKendrick before fleeing the scene. Rocky Mount police said that Sincere was on probation for a previous robbery conviction at the time. He's been charged with first-degree murder, shooting into an occupied dwelling, attempted robbery with a dangerous weapon, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Another suspect, 24-year-old Christopher Carr, was arrested and charged with accessory before the fact of first-degree murder, accessory after the fact of first-degree murder, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Both men are held at the Edgecombe County Jail without bond. 35-year-old Adam Tobias was fatally shot during a graduation party early Friday morning. The incident occurred at around 4:15 a.m. on the 26th of May at a home along the 5800 block of Santa Cecilia Lane in Houston, Texas. Authorities said that adults were present, and at some point the homeowner's boyfriend, 24-year-old Philip Arning, showed up at the residence. He then got into an argument with some of the guests, including Adam, whose daughter had graduated. Philip started asking people to leave. He then went and got a gun and started shooting at the crowd. Adam, who was unarmed, was shot and died at the front steps, while Philip remained on scene and was arrested and charged with murder. The investigation into the matter continues. A man is behind bars after he entered a semi-truck where a woman was sleeping and sexually assaulted her. The Okaloosa County Sheriff's Officers charged 23-year-old Taylor Copeland of Niceville, Florida, with sexual battery and burglary with battery. Authorities said that the victim and the man were asleep in a semi-truck on Okaloosa Island in Florida in the early morning hours of Sunday the 21st of May. The victim told investigators that he woke to find Taylor sexually battering her. The man inside the truck also woke up and began hitting Taylor in an attempt to defend the victim. Taylor is held at the Okaloosa County Jail in Crestview on a $200,000 bond. A man is behind bars after fatally shooting a woman outside a bowling alley. At around 11:45 p.m. on Friday the 26th of May, authorities responded to the parking lot of B&B Bowling Lanes, located at 3003 Fort Bragg Road, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 19-year-old Ayanna Thompson laying on the ground deceased with gunshot wounds. Authorities said they believe Ayanna was targeted. During the investigation, police identified 27-year-old Levon Campbell as the suspect, and he was arrested on Saturday. He's charged with first-degree murder, discharging a weapon into an occupied dwelling, and possession of a firearm by a felon. Police have not released a motive in the attack, as the investigation into the matter continues. A former correctional officer at a women's prison in Chowchilla, California, has been arrested on suspicion of sexually assaulting at least 13 inmates over the past 9 years. 54-year-old Gregory Rodriguez, who worked at the Central California Women's Facility, faces 96 counts including rape, sodomy and sexual battery. The alleged assaults dated back to 2014, but most occurred within the past 2 years. Gregory retired on the 25th of August last year after being approached about the assaults as part of an internal investigation. Gregory was arrested and booked into the Madera County Jail in lieu of $7.8 million bail. If convicted on all charges, Gregory could be sentenced to more than 300 years in prison. The body of an inmate who escaped from an Ohio prison last week was later found floating in the Ohio River. 50-year-old Bradley Gillespie has been imprisoned since 2016 for murder, before he and 47-year-old James Lee broke out of the Allen Oakwood Correctional Center in Lima, Ohio, on Tuesday the 23rd of May. James, who was sentenced in 2021 for burglary and safe cracking, was captured the next day, following a police pursuit of a stolen car both men were in. The vehicle crashed in Henderson, Kentucky, and both inmates fled the scene on foot. James was arrested at the scene, while Bradley remained at large. On the afternoon of the 28th of May, a boater on the Ohio River called Henderson police and said he saw what he believed to be a body in the water. When officers responded, they recovered it from the water and confirmed it was a body of Bradley through physical inspection and tattoo confirmation. His body was found near the location where he originally fled from police. It's unclear how long Bradley had been in the water for, or how long he had been dead for. Investigators said that based on the amount of decomposition the body showed, they indicated he had been dead for about 4 days. An autopsy will be conducted on the body on Tuesday to confirm the cause of death. A man and a woman were found dead in a home in an apparent murder-suicide with a crying infant unharmed. At around 11:45 a.m. on Saturday the 27th of May, authorities responded to the Peacock Run Apartments complex at 5502 Northwest East Torino Parkway in Port St. Lucie, Florida, after a family member of a man at the residence requested a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found the home locked, although they could hear an infant crying inside. Through a rear sliding door, officers saw 2 adults who appeared to be dead inside on the floor. Officers forced entry into the apartment through the locked front door and took the crying infant from a crib. The infant's now with a family member. Detectives remained at the scene collecting evidence and statements from neighbours. Investigators said the couple were in a romantic relationship and that the woman was fatally shot by the man, who then took his own life. Police did not disclose the victim's name, citing Marcy's law. However, family and friends confirmed the deceased woman to be 26-year-old Amanda Hicks. Amanda was a teacher at Dr. David L. Anderson Middle School in Stewart and is survived by a baby daughter. Neighbour Brianna Nesprell said, "I have kids, and I just couldn't imagine. With the way things are now, and mental health is so serious, you just really never know what someone is going through, or what's going on. It's crazy. It's definitely hard for anyone, but I feel like at the end of the day, you have to put your kids before anything. When you bring kids into the world, that should come before anything. It's crazy." 32-year-old Donald Johnson is behind bars and is accused of fatally shooting his girlfriend, 34-year-old Tawana Williams, over the weekend. At 8:54 a.m. on Saturday the 27th of May, authorities responded to a home at 1425 Talley Avenue in Petersburg, Virginia on reports of a woman shot. When officers arrived, they went inside the premises and found Tawana deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. Neighbours told investigators they heard Donald and Tawana arguing at the residence just before shots were fired. It's unclear what the argument was about. Donald's young niece and nephew were at the house being babysat by Donald's mother, who were all present when the shooting occurred. Donald was arrested a short time later and charged with first-degree murder, use of a firearm while committing a felony, and discharging a firearm in an occupied dwelling. He's held without bond as the investigation into the matter continues. A man is behind bars after he allegedly poured gasoline on another man before setting him on fire. At around 4:30 p.m. on Sunday the 28th of May, 34-year-old Earl Hargraves Jr. got into a verbal argument with another man at the Mobil gas station on 22nd Street in Tampa, Florida. Upset, Earl then purchased some gasoline from the pump and poured it over the victim and set him alight. The victim, who's not been named, was transported to the Tampa General Hospital, where he's been listed in a critical condition with life-threatening injuries. It's unclear what the argument was about. Earl was arrested that afternoon, and he's been charged with first-degree attempted murder and aggravated battery causing great bodily harm. He's been held without bond at the Hillsborough County Orange Road Jail. A man is behind bars after he allegedly shot his toddler son during an argument at his parents' home over the weekend. At around 8:10 p.m. on Sunday the 28th of May, authorities responded to a home at 4644 15th Avenue South in St. Petersburg, Florida on reports of a toddler shot. When officers arrived, they learnt that 22-year-old Aaron Creary got into an argument with his parents when he pulled out a gun, which fired and struck his 2-year-old son Amani. Aaron attempted to drive Amani to the hospital, but he lost control of the vehicle along the way and crashed into a car in the parking lot in front of the closed building at the intersection of 34th Street South and 15th Avenue South. After the crash, the child was taken to a nearby hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. Aaron was arrested and charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child and violation of probation. He's held at the Pinellas County Jail on a $750,000 bond. A 12-year-old boy is accused of fatally shooting a fast food employee during an altercation with a 20-year-old man. At 9:40 p.m. on Saturday the 13th of May, authorities responded to the Sonic Drive-In restaurant located at 301 South Old Betsy Road in Keene, Texas, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, witnesses pointed them in the direction of a man laying on the ground in the parking lot suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Medical personnel arrived on scene and transported the man by helicopter to Harris Methodist Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Keene police identified the victim as 32-year-old Matthew Davis. Upon further investigation, detectives learned that 20-year-old Unkel Gomez of Fort Worth arrived at the Sonic Drive-In with other people in his car. Unkel began acting disorderly and started urinating in the parking lot, so Matthew confronted him. The two men got into a physical fight when a 12-year-old boy inside Unkel's vehicle fired multiple shots at Matthew and fatally struck him in the back. Police believe the boy fired at least 6 shots using an AR-style rifle. A juvenile and Arkell fled the scene following the shooting, but Arkell returned and he was arrested. Police later located the juvenile in Rio Vista, arrested him and retrieved several firearms. Both the juvenile and Arkell were initially charged with murder. However, Arkell's charge was later dropped and he was instead charged with making a firearm accessible to a child resulting in death and tampering with evidence. He was released on a $70,000 bond. Authorities did not disclose the boy's name or the relationship between him and Arkell. The investigation into the matter continues. A 36-year-old man is behind bars for allegedly killing and kidnapping his 29-year-old ex-girlfriend. At around 7:40 a.m. on Saturday the 13th of May, Jameer Miller abducted Patrice Latoya Wilson at the end of her shift from a parking lot of the Detroit Receiving Hospital where she worked as a nurse, located in the 4200 block of St. Antoine Street in Detroit, Michigan. Jameer wore a blonde wig and tried to disguise his identity and approached Patrice from behind. He then forced her at gunpoint into a black 2020 Lincoln Nautilus SUV before speeding away. Police said he was considered armed and dangerous. At just after midday on Sunday the 14th of May, Patrice's body was found in the trunk of the SUV outside the Pavilion Court Apartments home complex, located at 22675 Pavilion Drive in Novi, Michigan. Police said that she died from a gunshot wound. Several search warrants were executed over the weekend when Jameer started feeling the pressure of the investigation. He negotiated his surrender with his lawyer at 2:15 p.m. on Sunday, and he turned himself into the Detroit Detention Center where he is held on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. Patrice's mother, Rosalind Livingston, said that Patrice and Jameer recently broke up. She said her daughter was trying to get away from him because she knew he was toxic to her. Authorities said that Jameer has a history of domestic violence and is a very violent person. Patrice leaves behind a son. A couple have been sentenced to life in prison for torturing a 3-year-old girl in February of 2020 in Collinsville, Oklahoma. Gustus Pennington and Jeanette Wilson will spend the rest of their lives in the Oklahoma Department of Corrections after they tortured Jeanette's daughter, including using a shock collar on the girl. At the time the couple were arrested, authorities said Gustus and Jeanette used the collar to the point that the batteries drained after 2 days. Investigators said they found text messages between the pair, talking about using the shock collar on the child. Jeanette initially reported the abuse to the Collinsville police and told them that she and her daughter had escaped home after being kidnapped and beaten. Jeanette told investigators that her boyfriend kept her and her daughter hostage for 6 days in a trailer. Despite her claims, investigators said she participated in the torture of her daughter. Investigators discovered that Jeanette went to work for several hours of several of the days, and even went to a laundromat once, even though her daughter was being beaten and shocked with a shock collar. Communications were discovered where Jeanette said she trusted her boyfriend to discipline the child, and discussed putting the shock collar on the highest level of 15 in order to rewire the child's brain. The couple locked the girl in a dark room and had a camera where they watched her on an iPad from another room when the girl was shocked. Jeanette told investigators that the shocking caused her daughter's head to flop from one side to the other, and once the force of the shock thrust the girl's body against the wall. Jeanette said that one time her daughter stopped moving and she thought she was dead. Jeanette admitted that she and Gustus had been smoking meth, and her boyfriend strapped the girl to a table and beat her with wood because she spoke with attitude. Gustus would force the girl to stand in cold showers for long periods of time, and also confined her to a room where she was given a cinder block to go to the bathroom. Gustus had Jeanette tell the girl that she did not love her, and she was sorry she had her. When deputies asked Jeanette why she let her boyfriend do these horrible things to a child, she said she wanted him to love her and thought he'll be a good dad because he was disciplining the girl. Jeanette finally contacted her family because Gustus was going to buy another shock collar because the first one was used so much it broke, and Jeanette said she read paperwork saying it shouldn't be kept on a dog very long. When officers found the girl, deputies said she was emotionless and covered with bruises, cuts and burn marks. Gustus and Jeanette were each sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to 5 counts of child abuse, 1 count of child neglect, and 1 count of conspiracy. Gustus was sentenced on the 10th of May, while Jeanette was sentenced earlier on the 28th of April. Her little girl has since been adopted and is reportedly in a good place and happy. A 29-year-old YouTuber is facing up to 20 years behind bars after pleading guilty to intentionally crashing his plane and recording the incident for views and to make money. Trevor Daniel Jacob secured a sponsorship deal from a company that sold various products including a wallet. Trevor agreed to promote the company's wallet in a YouTube video that he would post. On the 24th of November 2021, Trevor, who's an experienced pilot and skydiver, embarked on a solo flight from Lompoc City Airport to Mammoth Lakes in California. During the flight, he intentionally jumped out of the plane and recorded himself parachuting to the ground in his airplane as it descended and crashed. Jacob set up multiple video cameras on different parts of the aircraft and was ready with a parachute, camera and a selfie stick. While flying over Los Padres National Forest near Santa Maria, he exited the plane and recorded himself parachuting down. The plane then crashed into dry bush in Los Padres National Forest. In the video, which Trevor uploaded on the 23rd of December 2021, titled "I Crashed My Airplane," Trevor's seen walking to the crash site and collecting the video recording of his flight. On the 26th of November 2021, Trevor alerted the National Transportation Safety Board about the plane crash, and an investigation was launched. The Federal Aviation Administration reportedly launched a separate investigation around 3 days later. Trevor lied to investigators, saying that he did not know the wreckage's location, even though he and a friend flew by helicopter to the wreckage site on the 10th of December 2021. At the crash site, Trevor used the helicopter to lift and carry the wreckage to Rancho Sisquot in Santa Barbara County, where it was then loaded onto a trailer attached to Trevor's pickup truck. He then drove the wreckage to Lompoc City Airport and unloaded it in a hangar. He then cut up and destroyed the airplane wreckage, and over the course of a few days, deposited the detached parts of the wreckage airplane into trash bins at the airport and elsewhere, with the intent to obstruct federal authorities from investigating the plane crash. Trevor also submitted a false report and said that the aircraft experienced a full loss of power approximately 35 minutes after takeoff. He also lied to a Federal Aviation Administration safety inspector when he said that the airplane's engine had quit, and because he could not identify any safe landing options, he had parachuted out of the plane. His pilot license was revoked in April of 2022. On Thursday the 11th of May, Jacob pleaded guilty to one count of destruction and concealment with the intent to obstruct a federal investigation. 4 arrests have been made in connection to a homicide of a teenage girl. At around 6:50 a.m. on Friday the 12th of May, a woman called 911 after finding a body lying in the roadway of Timothy Lane, near Ridgefield Road in Ridgefield, South Carolina. When first responders arrived, they found an unresponsive girl with multiple gunshot wounds above her waist. Medics attempted life-saving measures, however she was pronounced dead at the scene. She was later identified as 14-year-old Maria Ezell of Somerville. Upon further investigation, authorities took 4 suspects into custody on the evening of Saturday the 13th of May. 18-year-old Drayton Tavares Smalls of Somerville, 19-year-old Sabine Alexander Buck of North Charleston, 17-year-old Bailey Maria Taylor of North Charleston, and an unnamed 16-year-old juvenile from Somerville have been charged in connection with Maria's murder. Bailey has been charged as an adult. Lieutenant Rick Carson of the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office said detectives worked through the mounds of evidence after finding Maria's body. During the day Saturday, many facets of the investigation started coming together. Detectives believe there are incidents involving the individuals prior to the shooting, and that this was a coordinated effort. Additional arrests are not expected, but have not been ruled out. Authorities have not disclosed what evidence they found or a motive in the murder. 23-year-old Robbie Robinson Jr. is behind bars for beating his father's girlfriend and setting her on fire. The incident occurred at 10:25 a.m. on Thursday the 11th of May at a home along the 2600 block of Arroyo Ridge Court in Hamilton, Ohio. The 50-year-old victim told officers that Robbie had beaten her to the point that 2 of her teeth were knocked out before dousing her with gasoline and throwing a flame at her. She then jumped more than 30 feet out of a second-story window of the home to escape. Neighbour Dennis Williams called 911 to report the incident after his dogs were frantically barking and led him to the woman lying on the ground. He said he saw the woman laying in the grass and it looked like she was covered in dust. He said he ran over to her and she said he set me on fire. The woman was airlifted to the hospital with second-degree burns covering half her body. She was listed in a critical condition and was placed into a coma. Body camera footage from a Fairfield Township police officer shows the arrest of Robbie, who was wearing a winter coat despite temperatures reaching 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Robbie repeatedly proclaims his innocence and expressed shock that his father's girlfriend was injured so badly. "I don't know what happened. It just went off," he said. When the arresting officers told Robbie that the woman he referred to as his stepmother jumped into the backyard, he appeared to be stunned and said, "Oh, she did?" Authorities said that Robbie and the victim both lived together. The motive in the attack is unclear. Robbie was charged with aggravated arson and felonious assault, and he's been held at the Butler County Jail on a $200,000 bond.